stream where the city and county dumped their concrete that they had demolished from the city parking lots, sidewalks in town when they were under the ADA requirement to put in those ramps. And so instead of taking it as they should to the approved landfill, somebody in the city decided, oh, it's better to just dump them in the stream. And so we the concerned elders got a call from Carol Cox, who's our good friend. He was at the doctor's and he couldn't do anything about it because he was getting some attention done. And so he called us and said, hey, go check out that stream. So our concerned elders class, Pat talked about, our early morning computer class, community engagement class, recessed, and we came out here, went up and down looking for this stuff. And when we found the concrete, and we can't go see it today, I'm sorry, we have to turn right here because we had a huge main break up the road, and so this place will not open up for a couple more months. So we're gonna turn here, and we're gonna go, if we could, but Ezra, slow as you go over the bridge, because there's some wonderful stories that we want Walter B. and Alice to share about not only what happened here, but what's here today.
It's that way.
Yeah, it's this way. Anyways, I grew up in Miley. I lived here all my life.
See all the green side? That's where they did all the dumping. Where the green grass, all that way, that's where they did the concrete dumping. Cost the city $1.7 million, that's for the fine. $1.3 million, that's for cleaning up that whole area. And they paid the workers for overtime, that's 5,500 hours. Anyway, from $26 an hour to $80 an hour overtime. And being concrete at that time frame was full of asbestos. This is a very live stream that goes directly out into the ocean, and the waves are very strong and hits upon Wai'anae Beach Park, where you have your recreational centers for all of our people on this side, from people from town coming over. And that was one of the things that was impacting our people. Here, Walter.
Okay, anyways, I grew up in Miley, and this is one of two streams that was anyway built over. As you can see now, we have this canal, but this was called Miley. It was spelled Mailliilii. That was the name of this stream. That was also the name of this road. And just yesterday, I don't know why we ended up talking about it, and I told Lucy, I said, you know what? I think the road here, the name is misspelled. So I left and I came, and sure enough, it's missing the last I. And in the phone book, it has the last I. On the old map, the 1930, it has the last I. And I told her, I remember being a young girl, seeing the black and white sign with my li'i on it. And so anyway, but what I wanted to say is this. So growing up, these streams, when it would rain during the rainy season, back here would flood. And so most of these homes were were built high, to allow for the water to go under. And during that time of the year, we'd be, as kids, back here would be all kiawe bushes. And so we'd be playing, because this stream and Maipalo'oa stream would connect. Where Maili Elementary School, that would be where, after the rains, that's where the waters would collect. But when the streams would connect, we'd be playing in there. We'd be playing there, and you'd see baby tilapia, baby mullet, baby moi in the bush, And so that time of the year is when I remember my dad them, as far back, well, as recent as like in the 70s, the old timers remember would stick to the kapu. There's certain days, certain time of the year you cannot catch go catch he'e. You cannot catch mullet. There's certain kind of fish. So they still had that. They still observed that. So anyways, so during the time of the year when it's rainy, the wet season, that's when the spawning would take place. And so as the rain start to stop, and then you've had things start to dry out, well, the fish are big enough. And so when you go out to the ocean, you would see, when the waves go up, you would see tons of silver schoolfish, schools of silverfish and reef fish all along the coast. And that's because it was a natural process that the area would go through. And these were all wetlands back here. Till today, I cannot understand why they can't, maybe do something within the canal to recreate that ecosystem again. Maybe we can't have the fish swimming from one stream to the next, but at least create that so the fish can come back in and start that cycle all over again. Because, we got the birds back here that came. We've got the Hawaiian stilt. We got the alai ula. And so they do come back and visit. So the thing is, when Lucy told me about the alai ula coming back, I told her, I said, my dad said they used to come back here because it was all marshland, and they used to catch the bird with the red face, and you had the one with the white face. So I guess that was alai ula, and the other one was the keokeo. And so he said they used to catch them and they used to eat them like chicken. So when I learned about the Maui stories and I learned about the alai ula, I said, oh my goodness, here this bird, you don't see him anymore, but it's tied to Wai'anae. And why? Then that would mean that back here had a lot of water a long time ago, and my dad remembers that. And so what happened is, when I learned about the Maui stories, and I learned that Wai'anae has a Maui was born in our Wai'anae story. Maui was born here. Ulihava, Ka'olai is mentioned. That's all areas in Wai'anae. So what happened is I started to kind of like look up stories having to do with Wai'anae and Maui. So if we had the alai bird, and the secret of fire was gotten from this bird, and when you look at the bird itself, it does, on that little red fleshy piece on the face of the bird, it looks like a flame. So that was tied into the Maui stories. And then also Hina, Hina, she made very fine tapa. Well, in order to make tapa, you would need vauke, and not to grow vauke, you need a lot of water. So that again ties into the old Wai'anae stories, that there was a lot of water back here. And then Auntie Alice, she did research, and she found paperwork in land deeds, and she came across Vauke Valley in Wai'anae. So I was like, oh wow, Auntie, that's interesting, because it again tying to our Maui stories. And then in the land deeds, she came across claims where people would describe their aina in Wai'anae, and they refer to their aina as mo'o. Mo'o sounds like mo'o. So who are these mo'o people? What were they all about? So mo'o, of course, they say mo'o, a lot of mo'o is tied to water. So again, more water. So we have to understand that here in Wai'anae, Ka'ala is the highest peak. So I remember as a girl, when you a little girl looking back, you always had cloud cover on the peak. And of course, now when you look at the back of the valley, you don't see as much kukui nut as before. Before, lots of kukui nut. Now you have, I don't know what they call it, silky oak or silver oak is taking over back there, and eucalyptus. But I always remembered having cloud cover on Ka'ala. And in Wai'anae Valley, we had water coming down both sides of the road. We'd go back there and go swim of Wai'anae Valley. If you didn't want to swim in the ocean, you go up to the mountain and swim. So there was a lot of water coming through our streams here. Right now you don't see a whole lot, but you always had water. It was always green in the streams, you know what I mean? So so there's a lot of changes that went on, and a lot of it is tied to water. Our Maui stories are tied to water. They talk about Hina Springs. Now, when we go up to visit Kaolai, there was a spring that I remember we'd have to cross when my dad had to go through the back road to get to NAD. We'd cross, the road would go like this, yeah, and there was always water. There was a spring there, and I remember one day Alika Silva and Glenn Keela and some of their friends took us there, you know, a group of people there to visit that area called Makalualei, and to show us the spring, because he said this is the spring that he wanted to buy from his auntie at the time. I think it was Mrs. Marks. But
our fish estuary is there a way that our governmental officials who prevail over water management could consider doing what other states on the Northwest have done with their streams, where they did do the right thing to control flood, but they also caught, there was a, whether unintended or intended consequence. And so now those people up there in the Northwest have taken some of their streams and they've actually cracked the concrete so that plant life can come back. And you still can control for flood, but you also now can nurture the stream to the way it's supposed to have been. And streams are here to feed us, you know, it's not just to protect us from the disasters. So that's something that we've put into our watershed plan when we had meetings with the Board of Water Supply. We put that idea forward, and it's something that we need to continue to monitor and promote. So where's your involvement? As you go home and you look at your streams, you look at the health of the stream, and you think about all of our streams out here. All of our streams are in concrete out here. Okay? Every one of them. So that's my challenge to you. We're going to go forward. We're going to make one more stop. Along the place was actually, I think, we found the plans in the city archives. There was a plan put forward to develop that into hotels. We're going to turn that into, I think, something like a little Ka'anapali or a little Waikiki or Ko'olina or something like that. That was in the 50s, the mid-50s. That was promoted by the Dillingham family. So a big debate was held at Wai'anae School in 1959, and I know there's some Wai'anae teachers on board. In 59, a major debate was held between Henry J. Kaiser himself and Ben Dillingham. The community showed up. Both of them presented their package to the community, and Dillingham lost. He was furious because he had been out here for years with the trains and all that, and he thought he had done some great things for the community, thinking he'd get their support. But this guy from nowhere called Henry J. Kaiser got the people's attention. And one of the ways he got it was he offered them health services, and that's where the Kaiser services, which we needed, okay? So here's the quarry.
Over here.
So Hawaiian Cement didn't get the approval, so they decided to move their operation. They moved their operation out to Kalailoa in that area, and there they remain. Well, 30 days later, Henry J. Kaiser appears before the city fathers with a proposal to turn this quarry, which he had purchased, because Hawaiian Cement guys left the town, left this area. So he purchased this, and he went to the city fathers and he said, listen, I want to build a cement plant down the road so I can take this stuff and produce it, okay? Now remember, 30 days before, they told Hawaiian Cement, you can't do that. And so we had two things. We had the Dillingham issue, and then we had this one. They told Hawaiian Cement, no, you can't do that. You can't build a cement plant down there. 30 days later, Kaiser goes with the same similar proposal. City father says, oh yeah, you can. So that became the first documented spot zoning for our new state. And we're going to go past that. So what's the message here? It hasn't changed, guys. It hasn't. Okay? So, but later on, we're going to talk about that spot. So here's the quarry. When Walter B talked about water, We know for a fact that there's water underneath this limestone because Alice is good friends, and I'm going to have her tell the story about what they did with the cells.
Anyway, I lived on Hakimo Road for 35 years, and the strangest part of it, every time I come over here, my car would stop. Something would go wrong with the car, and then some of the truck drivers would help me in the meantime and telling, hey, what's going on over there? And they says, oh, we're dumping coal, the hot coal. They're dumping them over there, and they would tell me, and then I would meet some of the residents, and they also told me, oh, all our junk that we have in the farm, we throw them all in there, and they said sometimes seawater comes up. So guess where all that contaminated material going back out into the ocean? There's this mighty school. 600 children are in that school. When what was the Congresswoman name? Hanabusa came over to visit Miley School. She started coughing. They almost had to call her, take her to the hospital. The contamination from this material was affecting her. So now some of the classroom has air conditioning, but it's still in the air, and it affects everybody in that whole area. Later on, I'll tell you about that tower.
So here in this landfill, why this is a significant struggle for us is back in 2003, the owner wanted to turn this into a landfill, a construction demolition landfill. We have some maps later on we'll put up when we get to Ma'o to show you the lay of the land. But less than 1,000 feet downwind, and the wind, by the way, blows this way, is Ma'ili Elementary School, Ma'ili Bible School. There was at one time Kamehameha's preschool. And then there's several care homes down there. Less than 1,000 feet downwind. So our concern was the dust. That was one. The one Alice talks about, the cells. There were some ancient, older cells on this, near the chicken farm. They go down about 50, 60 feet below grade. They scooped out all of that coral. So it's bigger than a football field. They filled that with ash, coal ash, from the AES power generating plant in Kalailoa. That ash is used to create power that they sell to Hawaiian Electric. It's coal that comes from Indonesia. Almost once a week, you see this ugly looking boat come across our horizon. It pulls into the small boat harbor, and they offload the coal on this blue belt. So whenever you get a chance to go down to Campbell, you'll see this blue belt that goes across the road. So they don't need trucks. They just put it on the conveyor, and it takes it to the power plant. They burn it in water. They boil it. So you don't get the soot, but you get the bottom ash. That ash was trucked to this landfill and so-called recycled. Community had no idea. The health department has standards to measure all those chemicals that are in it, the heavy metals that are in it. They have standards. And so we were trusting that every time they take a sample, they're checking the ash and they're saying the ash is okay. So truck it here. And it would go in this cell, but the problem was Alice's good neighbor used to work for the chicken farm. And he told us, and he's still alive today, that they were given permission by the Lone Star people who owned the quarry back then to dump their chicken manure in those cells. Like it's going to take 1,000 years, right, to fill it up. But they would notice the water ebbing and flowing. So we knew there was penetration. Then we came across a fellow who actually worked here, and he was the one who verified for us that they did penetrate not only that cell, but another cell. So that moved us to go to the Department of Health and say, you need to put monitoring wells, makai of these cells to measure what's coming out. Because there's no way in hell they're going to dig up that ash, put a liner in it, and then put it back in. But that's what we have to live with, because our health department, in the way they permitted that activity, is called permit by rule. Permit by rule has no provision for to inform the public, nor for the public to inform the government. It's just a negotiation between the operator and the landowner. So when in 2003 they wanted to turn this into a landfill, the concerned elders rose up and said, we don't want to talk about your landfill. We want to change the conversation. And our conversation was, talk about the ash on your land. And they went, what ash? Talk about the ash. So here was something in not secret, but behind the curtain. We brought it forward, made it public, and we controlled the conversation by saying, that's what we need to talk about. Because it's speaking to the character of the owner, the character of the government, and the way in which they perceive community. That needed to be the conversation. Not whether this becomes a landfill for our municipal waste or a landfill for our construction waste. And of course, Hanabusa rose to the occasion and helped us stop this landfill from moving forward. It also stopped this operator from taking any more ash and putting it on this land. And it raised the issue with the health department because they said the ash was being recycled. And our kupuna, we just said, we're not that smart, but I think that's the final resting place. How can that be recycling? Okay, so sometimes those questions never get answered, but at least you raise it, and then it moves them to think twice about what they're going to do next time. So it's not always winning completely, winning from the front end. Sometimes it's coming from the side end. But the key lesson we learned as concerned elders is we need to control and define the conversation. It must be ours, not theirs. So what you see here is this is the military property. These tall towers are, for now, the tallest structures on the island, and maybe surpass when they do the 700-story condos in Kaka'ako, but for now they're the tallest. They serve as a communication network for the military. At one time I was told for submarine, but I'm not in the military, so I don't know all that, but it's very active. One time we had a problem in the early 80s. There's a particular bunch of streets on Maili where people were getting sick, a lot of leukemia cases. So a study was done by the Navy. The conclusion was inconclusive. They couldn't do a cause and effect direct, but nobody could deny that we had a number of leukemia cases among those 3 streets. And they thought it was coming off from the radio towers. Yeah, so you can find the reports. It's always online. The military does, they do testing, they report it, it's all public, but I don't understand it. And that's one of the things that we lack out here, and we really turn to the university professors for in the 90s, the early mid-90s, the Defense Appropriation Bill inserted a provision to establish the Ford Island Development Program. They needed money to finance that. So the law now says that when there is excess military land, it no longer has to go back to other federal governments for first rights of refusal, nor to the originating state or the county, that it actually bypasses that procedure and goes directly to a private enterprise. So this land will not come back. If it ever becomes excess land, and we anticipate a portion of it will become excess land, and that's the munition magazine, because they're moving out to Westlock. It won't come back to our state under this provision. If you have doubts in your mind, just remember what happened when those young men went into the bunker at Wai'anae to dismantle the pyrotechnic fireworks, and it blew up. That Wai'anae bunkers were excess lands, no longer in the hands of government, but in the hand of a private party. Okay? You ever wonder why nothing ever happened? Go read the stories about what the city investigators said, what their director told them, and what we haven't seen ever since. Okay. So, what does this mean for Hawaiians? We thought we'd get our land back. Not going to happen. As long as that provision is there, it won't happen. I don't know what we're going to do to undo this, so I throw it out to the cosmos to help us. Okay. All right. Any questions? Candace?
It should have been Pu'uheleakala. Well, anyways, again, you know, when Mr. Kachola had told me about Maui, like I said, I went and I saw the profile. I showed up at Garden Grove. But, you know, just a couple years ago, actually, when I came across Liliu's translation, Liliu Okalani's translation of the Kumulipo, I read that Maui section of her giving birth to Maui and him being born from an egg. And so I said, well, you know, that is interesting. So I don't know. I don't speak Hawaiian. I don't read. But my Hawaiian that I understand is mostly nonverbal. So it comes, yeah, the na'au. So if you look at the Pu'uheleakala, you will see by the time we get to just past Ulihava Springs, before we get to the BK Shopette supermarket, that small store on the Farrington, you will see the Maui being born. So you would see his beak coming out of Pu'uheleakala like an egg laying on its side. So just imagine the pu'u laying on its side. Just imagine that it's like a giant egg, and then Maui is going to start pecking his way through the shell.
Okay, here he comes.
So there's the beak.
See the first beak? You see it. Now the second beak.
And the second part of the beak. He's going to be born now. And just can you imagine how, you know, it's like, who you, yeah.
2005, Tropic Land purchased land along the mountainside here, and they wanted to develop an industrial park. And so in their environmental impact statement, they said that the land on 96 acres of their land was not agriculturally productive. And so, you know, we look around and, you know, you'll see there are all these 2-acre truck farms. So how can the land not be agriculturally feasible? When you look at these farms, these truck farms, what you'll see is they're 2-acre lots, and they grow their produce in the back of the lot. So people often don't realize how agriculturally productive Lualualei is. So Lucy, Alice, and I went walking from house to house to speak with the farmers, to let them know about the plans to, the developers' plans to request for a rezoning from the agricultural district to the urban district for the land against the mountain that is known as Ka'olai, the birthplace of Maui. So as we went around talking to farmers door to door, they had no idea that there was any plan to urbanize Lualualei. We began to learn about a history of displacement of the farmers from places like Kalihi and Hawaii. So in 1955, the City Planning Commission ordered the removal of piggeries from Kalihi, and those piggeries moved out towards the Koko Head area. And from 1949 to 1959, many of the piggeries, or many of the farms that were in the Wai'anae Kahala district, were moved further back to Koko Head. But then, in 1960s, Henry Kaiser decided he wanted to develop Hawaii Kai. So the farmers who had been displaced from Kalihi were then asked to be relocated once again. At that point, many of them lost their farms because they couldn't afford to relocate. And some of you know the story of George Santos, the pig farmer who held out into like I think 1971 or 1972 against Bishop Estate's eviction of him from his farm. So as we walked along, we learned that, as Lucy was saying, Pearl Tavares' hog farm, which is coming up down the road here, Pearl Tavares had been evicted from Bishop Estate land in the Cocoa Head area. And she said 150 of her friends who were farmers were evicted at that time, and they moved here to Wai'anae. And she said if they industrialize Wai'anae, they have nowhere else to go. So the farmers took a stand against the development of the industrial park. And when they heard about it, they told stories about how there was a farm on that land. And Walter V actually worked on that farm and had photographs of all of the produce that they grew on that farm. Lettuces, watermelons, green onions, his sweet Wai'anae onions. There was an abundance of produce that they produced on 1/5 of that property, and the rest of the a larger part of the property was used to raise goats for milk. So we had these photographs, and as the developer was saying that land in the petition area is agriculturally unfeasible, we were flashing on the background pictures of the farm and of all the produce that they had harvested from that farm to disprove the kinds of stories that they were trying to retell for their own purposes. We also learned that what happened is, as the farmers were being relocated from the Hawaii Kai. Oh, there's Pearl. Oh, this is her Tavares hog farm. And so they told stories about how Tadashi Araki had actually purchased land on the, not purchased land, was leasing land from the McCandless heir at the time on that petition area. And he farmed there from 1967 to 1977 for 10 years and was very productive and was increasing his acreage every year. And other farmers remembered him and would tell stories about his green onions. What happened then was McCandless in 1977 decided to raise the rent and take a percentage of his crop yields, and he couldn't afford that, so he left. And another farmer moved in, Roye Higa moved in, and we actually met Mr. Higa and talked to him about his farming. And he said he farmed there for 10 years, and he sold all his produce to Time Supermarket and to Terua supermarkets out here, or Tamura supermarkets out here. And he even has a letter from the wife of the governor, Mrs. Burns, Beatrice Burns, complimenting him on his produce. So he was there until 1988 when a Japanese corporation came in and they wanted to develop a golf course. And so they evicted Mr. Higa. 1,000 people came out, and Mr. Higa coined the phrase, "No can eat golf balls." And they made thousands of t-shirts, and everyone wore these t-shirts saying "No can eat golf balls," and they were able to stave off the development of the golf course. Later, I think in the 90s, they were able to get the city council to rezone the land for the golf course. But at that time, Frank Fossey stepped in and said, you cannot have county water to water your golf course. You need to find other sources of water. And they were not able to find that. And so, no golf course. All the way up until 2005, when Tropic Land purchased the land and wanted to develop the industrial park. So it's an amazing story when you hear the farmers talking about the effects of urban spot development. Unfortunately, landfills are considered an acceptable use on agricultural lands. It makes no sense at all. So PBT landfill, which we'll be going to shortly, is actually designated as agricultural land, and landfill uses are considered compatible. What happens is the developers, especially Tropic Land, what they were saying was, because you have industrial uses on agricultural land in this area, it's compatible with their plans for an industrial park. So these compatibility issues are so convoluted, and it's a real problem in terms of the question of zoning. I think it's the Pine Ridge Farms was one of the only places that's in this whole valley that's designated for industrial use. And that was a long story that Lucy can tell about how that came to be, but it was all through Henry Kaiser. Okay, so we were very successful. We were able to argue, and I think maybe somebody may tell more of that story here, but we were successful in presenting a case against the developer, and the Land Use Commission ruled against their petition for rezoning. So that was a significant victory for the community. You know, victories are kind of few and far in between, so you really celebrate those exciting moments, and it was very meaningful for us. But I think it is important, like for people working on community projects, to actually go and talk to people who are in the community, and to learn their stories in order to build a case. Yeah. Okay, so this is the property that Tropic Land purchased, and this is the area known as Ka'olai. When it went to the city council voted to support a Wai'anae Sustainable Communities Plan that the director of, is it the Planning Commission, arbitrarily put in a spot for the development of Tropic Land, and the city council actually voted to support that. But nothing has happened so far on this land, so that's the good news, that's the good part. Also, there's this thing called the impermanence syndrome that is very significant in terms of urban spot development, because once you have one area that's designated for urban use, banks and loan companies are reluctant to loan farmers money to build structures, to purchase expensive equipment, and in that way, this impermanence syndrome is the way through which urban spot zoning kills off farming. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over. I don't know.
This place, and I told her, where is it? And she started to describe it, and I said, oh, I remember that. That's the old Iraqi farm. I never worked. Okay, correction. I never worked here. It was my younger siblings and my young cousins who were hired. You know, they were high school kids. And then the farmer would pick them up after school, and they'd come here and work as farmhands and earn money that way. So I remember the farm. And then, of course, as time went on, one of my Ohana ended up marrying me, one of my brothers that ran the farm. So anyways, so she said because, you know, I guess the developers, the owner was saying that nothing can grow there, you know, there's no water. And I said, you know, I remember even after the farm, I mean, they had tall vili trees and palm trees growing, and all of a sudden nothing. So what I did was I talked to my cousin, and I asked her if she had any snapshots of the old farm, and so she loaned me her pictures, and there's tons of them, but this is the one we have here. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not talking loud enough. But anyway, so this is what you see now. This is what was presented to the Land Use Commission, I guess. Yes. Right here. But this is what the farm was like when my family worked in. Very productive. Very productive. And of course, they had water, right? So you got water, you can grow stuff, you can raise things, you know.
And the soil. The soil is B soil. So under important ag land, this is rated high.
So anyways, then I told her that I met an old, one of my elementary school teachers, and I don't know if you know him, his name is Fred Cachola, and he was telling me how special Wai'anae was, you know, and so he was telling me about the Maui stories, and he told me that, you know, if you get up about 5 o'clock in the morning and you go to Garden Grove and you look east, you'll be able to see Maui. And so I did that, and I could see his profile. I said, oh, that's very interesting. So I started to kind of trying to, you know, started to read a little bit more, whatever I could find about the Maui stories pertaining to Wai'anae. And I came across the kumulipo that the queen, when she was imprisoned at the palace, at Iolani Palace, she had translated the kumulipo from Hawaiian to English. And in it is, I think it was the 15th war, in it has the story of the birth of Maui and Hina describing the birth of her child from an egg, and that I will show you later when we're on Farrington Highway. So I just want to say that a lot of the Wai'anae stories are tied to our landscape, you know. So here you've got the Maui stories, and then you go to Wai'anae Valley, you got the story of Puhinalo and Kaiona, and you go to Makaha, and then you got more stories. So the Maui story is pretty much from Lu'ulu'ulei, actually almost to Kepuhi Point, to the end of Makaha. So and when I say the Maui stories, because in our landscape you can actually point out features that are in the story itself, in the legend itself. So and then of course, you know, Maui is tied to the sun, you know, and of course why you can feel it now, but also with all this sun you had water, because like I mentioned, you know, Hina had her right, she had her springs. Ka'ala Farm is the highest peak, so whatever doesn't get dumped on the windward side she catches. And at one time, you know, she had a bog up there that's where a lot of the water would that overflow would fill our streams. And there's a 1,000-foot waterfall. I don't know if it's still there, but it was recorded by the Army Corps of Engineers.
It's still there when it
It's still there?
When it
Well,
rains.
it was there before, even without raining. So that's how much changes. You know, when you take away the water, you reroute water, that's what happens. You change the landscape. And so people, when they talk to people, they always say, oh, Wai'anae was always dry. I said, no, if you go to the back, Wai'anae always had water. You know, and if you come during the summertime, of course, the front going to look dry, but the back is where we grew our crops. You know, that's where our vegetable products were, food crops were. And then, of course, your protein, you go to the ocean. I mean, ideal, right? I mean, I remember walking from the back of Lululei, where my grandparents lived, down to Huaka'i Bay, and it was just like a breeze. So your kupuna did that all the time. You know, they didn't have the bus service and all that. You know, they walked. And it was a healthy lifestyle. It's an everyday occurrence, you know. So when you look at the mountains now with the rain, you can see how much green it is. But imagine when we had water running down, you know, the streams, So a lot of changes had taken place. But anyway, so now, Auntie Alice, your turn.
This is from the archives. And it has Ka'olai and Ulihaka. It says, well, according to Samuel Kamakau, the demigod Maui was born at Ka'olai and Ulihaba. So I told him, this is Ka'olai, and Ulihaba is a stream, goes directly across that way. That way is Phuket Pass. Why it's important, guys? Water. Man need water to subsist on. And you do your traveling when? Daytime, so your feet can come hot. Nighttime you travel. Always nighttime. Ancient people, well, they didn't have to go to school to learn that. They lived by the land, This is Ka'olai and Ulihaba. What's so important about this place is there are three important things that have happened to us. We had done, Mike Lee that says, oh, let's go do a stargazing. If you look at the newspaper, May 10, 2010, and you look at the weather, all of Wai'anae, all of Oahu was nothing but dark clouds. And he says, we're going to do stargazing that night. We went, yeah, all right, yeah, okay. I was stuck in town. I called Lucy. I says, Lucy, what? There's nothing out there, right? The clouds.
On Olelo then.
Yeah, I was on Olelo talking about this site. And she says, no, Alice, we're looking at the stars. I'm going, Marty, she's cracking up already. You know, no way they can look at the stars and everything. These youth are your evidence. Till today, they still talk about that night, how the clouds like curtains rolled back and the stars just came down. And Mike with his flashlight is shining. Was better than going over to the museum, over the Bishop Museum, paying all that money, and here the stars just coming down, and we're all wet, all on the other side of the island, coming over here, go into this property and find out, whoa, what happened? The stars are coming down. That's one thing that happened. Another thing is, B showed you how this place was, dry and arid. The commissioners wanted to come and see this place. And I remember the city guy telling me this, see, Alice, nothing over here, nothing. Because that picture that you seen in the magazine was nothing. And the attorney turns around and said, see what I mean? It's dry and arid. And all of a sudden, boom, this cloud burst, and not a cloud in the sky. But this rain just coming down and drenching all of us. We're running to the cars, and Lucy them, wow, what's going on? They're over at Farrington, protesting, holding the signs and everything. And we take off our cars, and we're going down towards where we show you later on, over to the preschool, over at Princess Kahanu. Because what had happened was, all over here became dark. Then you could see Maui lying in slumber. I was thinking, gee, Maui, you did that to the right persons. The last one was, Mike turns around and says, I want to do a whole kupu. What's blocking us? Fence. I'm going to go on the property and we're going to do a whole kupu. I was telling Lucy, oh, come on now. Again, we got to go through this whole thing. Well, 3 days before the event of going to do a whole kupu, had a fire. A big fire. The fire department came out here and rolled back beautiful entrance. We come over here and I said, wow, they're waiting for us. He went inside, he did his whole kupu. Tell me how beautiful the whole thing is. It's your cultural sites, the most important of your living that you have around you, that's surrounding you. Yeah. And can you imagine them building all these industrial parks? They were gonna 96 acres, 1 acre lot for $1 million. They bought it for $3 million. 1 acre lots for $1 million. And the majority was going to be trucking companies. Wow. 500 of them. I didn't make that statement. They made that statement. In the EIS, they made the statement that that's the amount they were going to bring in here. Can you imagine what our farmers going to... You know, everybody talk about farmers. You know where our farmers really supposed to go? This was over 40 years ago. They were going to put our farmers, when the lease ran out in Makua, that's where your farmers are supposed to go. All farmers are supposed to go that direction. You're supposed to turn around. That's why they were doing all this development. That's why they were going to do all of this. Shove our farmers over there, Makua. What concerned elders wanted to do with this land, because what Tadashi and Mr. Higa did, give it to our farmers, Ma'o farmers, the students, as a beginning business for them. And then as they grow and they prosper, they can buy their own place and give it to the next. But that's what concerned elders really wanted to do with this property, because the importance that they got, demigod and his mother, his love for his mother, yeah, his love for his people to slow down the sun. Because why? She's trying to make clothing for them. Our mothers, our women. The men to turn around and take the responsibility to ensure that they're protecting their families. That's what the tale of the demigod Maui is most important too. It's showing us the past, the present, and the future. So this is what we need to do. Don't go against the system. Go with the whole the cultural portions of it. I want Huaka'i Past people to talk about Huaka'i Past. I have a stone figure over here. And what had happened was, see this? On certain parts, like I said, our people travel during the night. Okay, this top portion is a shield. What is the shield for? The winds. They will light the kukui knot. The kukui knot takes anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes, and they will place it on there. And the next third person will turn around and place another one. The last one will turn around and make sure that the fire was off, coming down the pathways. So these are some of the things that we need to protect. And the reason why they wanted this land, they were seeing that Huaka'i Past coming through. And I remember the developer saying, they wouldn't have to go through you guys' Wai'anae side, you can go through there. In the meantime, you're going to be destroying all your cultural sites. The importance of your existence today. Thank you.
Only problem is they've not told these people that they're leasing to about the cultural artifacts that we have there. And so there's been a lot of desecration that's being done in the area. They've uprooted pohakus that are significant with petroglyphs. Pohakus that are marked as boundaries, those are gone. There's paths along Huaka'i Pass that has been bulldozed. They're just bulldozing everything down to nothing. And we're so concerned that this was one of the first desecrations that we found. And in this desecration area here, there was a pohaku that was found with a bunch of petroglyphs on it. But as it goes up there are walkways, stone walls that go for miles throughout the area. You know that there was habitation up here, and also terraces where they had their farms, and their lo'is. There's 3 so far heiaus that was found in that area. Recently we found heiau that is very rare to Hawaii. It's called the Unu Kane Kanaloa heiau. Very significant to the Hawaiian people.
And
And they wanted to put a regional park right over here on this side.
yeah, that was what we call the blue spot. So Amy and Sheila, it's the same guys that was on the land, the guys who financed that big property. So it's the same guys, Yeah, so they put a blue spot here to try to stop that landfill. So here's the PV landfill. And then here is where it starts to get really dry. And see the trees? That's just started. You see how young? They've been here since the 80s. And only now the trees are going up. We want the trees to go up that hill there on the asbestos pile. We want it to go all the way up there. Here are the families. They tell us because we Hawaiian. That's why. And we cannot do a one-to-one cause effect. But like Lohi'a, we're not stupid. Okay? So the Navy owns all the way down here. All of these people have to get a permission from the Navy to use this road. This is one of the most, what they call it in the traffic study, an E road, meaning it's the most congested of the intersections on this road, on this highway. Now I'm going to turn it over to Walter B because she's going to tell us about Maui.
Keep talking.
Pu'us, you know, pu'u this, pu'u that. But the only mauna she referred to is the
Mauna
smallest of the
lahi-lahi.
pu'us.
Mauna Lahi Lahi and Mauna
Yeah, so it's
Kuale.
that dark one out there, that little guy out there with the, you can see the condominiums right next to it. That's the smallest of all the,
And there's Mauna
Pu'us, but-
Kuale, and then you can
yeah.
see.
So we call that one mauna, and then the other one where the shark is, we call that Mauna Kuale, and that too is a very low lying. Remember when we were on the other road, I said, look for that little knob? Okay, that's one of the fins from the other side. But you saw how low it lay, right? That's called Mauna. So, Brian, interesting, yeah, that they call that low kind stuff Mauna, where we typically think of them as the big guys, right? So it has nothing to do, we believe, with height. It has to do, we believe, with significance to this land. And so that story about the pulling up the islands is very, very significant because it explains why we are islands and not a big, massive, touch. So some things will just. You're gonna notice that on the right, when we go in, an old house, and I really wish Kukui then would preserve that and turn that into a kind of a. The Pakea side, that used to be all part, and Wai'anae was all part of the Sher family. They bought a piece of land, and her father had to pull out all of the cotton trees. At one time, we had a cotton industry out here, and Harris, another one of our kupuna in our group. Also, we've had famous people out here like Michelle Obama. She came twice, and yeah, we came to wave to her. So her kids planted these 2 mango trees at the entrance here, Sasha and Malia. So okay, we're here. He was like that at one time with his daddy, Eric Enos. So his whole life has been in this community. And he's going to now talk to the ag issues and where we are today and the hope for the future. It was from Kamu that I learned the phrase, whenever there is a no, that's what we try to oppose, there also needs to be an elegant yes. And I learned from him. So
Hey guys, thank you for coming up to Mao. Thank you for taking your Saturday to come to Wai'anae and to join us in the work that we do in environmental justice in whatever way, shape or form. And I want to be really clear, when we talk about environmental justice, people talk about the NIMBY on the continent, not in my backyard. This is all our backyard in Hawaii. We wouldn't, the things that we're not talking about, we're talking about is like how do we push this someplace else, how do we do it this year? Because all of this Pai'ai and all of these islands are our backyard, so we don't want to get anything out there. That we're just trying to push this up. So, here's at Mao Farms. My understanding is in common, we're going to have a working lunch. I'm going to talk at you guys while you guys eat and help with your digestion. We're going to go inside, and then after you guys pull, we're going to give you a tour. Quick logistics, the restrooms are there. Is that we used to have porta potty. challenges with our best practices. So that's the first thing we do. The second thing we aspire to do is to create opportunities to higher education for a community of learners that are still tapped out. I dropped out of Wai'anae between these when followed, and a whole bunch of my peers did. And the kids in our community tend to learn to have, they're working in groups, and they're working on projects. And tapped out peer-based projects. That's where our high schools. It's in the package.
Yeah.